Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Big Chill Podcast. This is episode 411, Exploring the Life of Johnny F.D. Hello, Big Chillians, and welcome back to the Big Chill Podcast. I'm Frank, joined as always with Eddie. So, Eddie, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I'm happy we're getting towards the end of the week. I have to admit, this has been a tiring week for me. So I am looking forward to the weekend in a way that I probably usually don't.
Must be tough to start working again.
No, but I mean, just, like sometimes I don't notice too much. Now that it's constant work from home and that kind of scenario, sometimes the week bleeds into the weekday. Yeah. Or even the weekend. Can't even get it out right. But yeah. And I guess also for, if you're tuning in, if you're here for the Johnny FD interview, because that's on this episode, and I know we'll probably have a bunch of new listeners coming in to learn more about one of their favorite YouTubers. That interview takes place around, I'm going to guess now and say about 30 minutes into this episode, but we're recording, who knows exactly. But don't skip ahead, listen to the podcast. If you're a new listener, make sure to subscribe. And you can also go and check out our content on YouTube, if that's your preferred platform, and make sure to follow us there. Yeah. But keep in mind, most of our content stays purely audio.
Yeah. Or follow us on Twitter and Instagram as well. And start posting clips on there.
Yes. Yeah, where our activity ranges. Sometimes pretty active, sometimes not so much. I think it's just what they tell you to do in terms of growing social media channels is inconsistent, infrequent activity.
Just go dormant.
Tip number one. Yeah, go dormant for a while. Make sure that the fans that are still there, they're the true fans. That's how we weed you all out.
So maybe, if we have a bunch of new listeners now, instead of going hardcore into a sports topic and ripping apart someone like Eli Apple, who still can't shut up after losing a Super Bowl, I have a topic that popped up on my Facebook feed that I wanted to see what you thought about, Eddie. So Happy Gilmore turns 26 years old today, and I guess now, since they did the 25th anniversary last year, they're just going to repeat this every year. It's such an important movie to the sports culture that Happy Gilmore has to get credit for every yearly anniversary. But what they posted with it is, who's the best sports movie villain of all time? And obviously they're saying this because you have Shooter McGavin, who is a quite hateable character in Happy Gilmore. The other ones that they've given are Ivan Drago from Rocky, White Goodman from Dodgeball, Big Red from Bring It On, Johnny Lawrence from Karate Kid, Rachel Phelps from Major League.
Controversial. The Johnny Lawrence being a villain in the world in which Cobra Kai has made us rethink the Karate Kid background story. Maybe LaRusso, Danny LaRusso is the villain in that.
Very true. Rachel Phelps, the owner from Major League, Bud Kilmer, the coach from Friday Night Lights. Sorry, not Friday Night Lights, Varsity Blues. Sorry.
I was going to be like, wait, which goat is that? The really racist goat from Friday Night Lights? Because if that's who it is, then I'm going to say he's the biggest villain.
Sorry, Bud Kilmer from Varsity Blues, Clubber Lang, also Rocky, or Jean Girard from Talladega Nights, and then other.
It's a pretty long list you've just thrown at me there, and by the time you got to the end, I think I'd forgotten some of the names at the beginning. I'm going to go Dodgeball, the Ben Stiller
White
character
Goodman
from Dodgeball. Because he's like a true villain. A lot of them aren't real villains. They're just the rival of the person in question. Like even Drago is not really a villain, apart from his
he killed someone in the ring.
Yeah, but he didn't.
He kind of purposely did it. But he kind of purposely killed him. He could have stopped.
But I mean, I'll go Ben Stiller in Dodgeball. He is a true villain.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
I mean, my real Aside from that, I might go
I would go the.
from The Natural.
Oh, okay.
You know, the woman who shoots him. She's a real villain.
Yeah. I would say the Rachel Phelps, the owner from Major League, because she's actively trying to ruin the career of her entire organization. It's pretty villainous.
I guess, but maybe. I mean, we had that in Ted Lasso, that exact storyline, and then there was a change of heart in Ted Lasso.
Maybe that's the villain, Nate.
Yeah, season 1, the owner, Rebecca, can't remember her full name, she would have been a major villain. And then plot twist, no spoilers, but season 2, not so bad.
Yeah. But spoiler alert for season 2 of Ted Lasso, maybe Nate is the villain. I don't know if you heard, but Aaron Rodgers and Shailene Woodley have separated. And they are...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep. That was released yesterday. This whirlwind engagement.
He does not have a good track record with relationships. And I don't want to find any pleasure or humor in the fact, because obviously disappointing and potentially devastating for him. But he definitely does not have a good track record at this point.
But, I mean, family relationships, professional relationships, adult relationships, every aspect of his life from a 10,000-foot view here looks like he has trouble with relationships. I mean, this, you're starting to get a picture of maybe who this person is.
Yeah, and it's obviously from an outsider's perspective, it's so hard to judge. It's also interesting, right, because it appeared as if she had been kind of an influence in terms of his adoption of homeopathy and the more unusual medical approach that he had taken throughout the pandemic. So it's then interesting to see as to whether or not he abandons ship on that particular approach and suddenly gets himself vaccinated and starts acting like a normal human being. Although I know he's still friends with Dr. Joe Rogan, so as long as he's got that going on, I'm sure he'll still stay out there.
So I guess the piece of sports news we should discuss is the Champions League is back and off to a somewhat rough start for some bettors out there.
It was an interesting first set of games. Obviously, I think the big storyline was the PSG Real Madrid game. Not only because I think on paper it's the most compelling. It's the kind of two teams you'd give each team a chance of winning the Champions League itself, which maybe in the other ties, I guess Liverpool, Inter Milan kind of falls into that category. But people remain very skeptical about Inter's prospects in Europe. But the big talking point out of the PSG Real Madrid match was, obviously, Mbappe is out of contract at the end of the year, and all speculation points to the fact that he will be signing for Real Madrid. He scored a last-minute winner in the match. After the match, he then claimed he has yet to make a decision on his future, and that he's already playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world, and that until the end of the season, he is solely focused on playing for PSG. I think that's as good of an answer of saying I'm leaving as you can kind of give mid-season when you're, I won't make that. It's kind of what LeBron James has done on several occasions, where it's, I'm happy here for now, but I'll assess my options at the end of the season. That basically means whatever options are out there, one of them is not going to be where I currently am.
Yeah, so I guess you had PSG winning, Man City comfortably cruising past. Those were Tuesday's matchups, and then Wednesday you had what was the first match?
Wow, you're just so comfortable.
I can't think of it.
So we've had 4 matches so far. So you had City as comfortable winners against Sporting.
Liverpool.
Yeah, and which is another opportunity for us to say, right, another week where I have seen numerous people within the sporting community speak about the fact that Manchester City had played Sporting Lisbon, which is not their name. Already gave this piece of advice on a previous podcast. Actually had feedback from the listeners saying they were unaware of this fact. But their name is just Sporting. And so, yeah, City were comfortable winners. PSG were last-minute winners against Real Madrid. Liverpool were fairly comfortable 2-0 winners away in Milan. And then the surprise of the week so far was Salzburg managing to get a 1-1 draw with Bayern getting a last-minute equalizer at home to Bayern Munich, you'd still assume that with that being the away leg, Bayern will go through comfortably. But on the back of a surprising 4-2 defeat at the weekend, it looks like Bayern might not be in the best of form at the moment.
Yeah, and they're disappointing bettors all over the world.
Yeah, although listener Ollie, he has a soft spot for Salzburg. He claimed to have some level of intuition that Salzburg might spring a surprise.
Good for him.
Yeah.
So happy for Ollie at all times.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? He might make an appearance on the podcast in the near future. You know, I obviously spoke with him about it a little bit at the weekend. He said one of the things he needed to sort out was a proper studio setup to record the podcast. And because he does his Twitch streaming for playing video games, he actually has a pretty high-tech setup for that. So he meets all of the requirements from a technical standpoint for recording the podcast. So there are no other excuses to not have him on at some point in the future.
Now, let's be clear. Unlike the YouTuber Johnny FD that we have coming up shortly, that will not be an invited interview. That will simply be him joining the podcast to talk about things.
Yeah,
in no way, shape, or form am I interviewing Ollie as a guest on our podcast.
Yeah, no. I think, no, he doesn't quite have the necessary following to qualify as a guest. He will be a contributor. But no, and maybe that's then a natural way for us to transition away from our little preamble and right on to the interview that many people will have tuned in for. So I guess we can switch over to a very interesting interview with Johnny FD, and one that very little mention of sport, but a lot of mention of travel, a lot of mention of food, and a lot of mention of net worth. Well, welcome back to the Big Chill podcast. We're now delighted to be joined by our guest, Johnny FD, YouTuber, podcast host, global nomad. I don't know how best to describe you, but thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
Yeah, happy to be on. I was a little bit skeptical because I don't watch sports. And I was like, what am I going to do on the podcast?
It's okay, neither do we.
We don't.
No, just kidding.
We don't exclusively discuss sports. We're kind of like all over the place. Like, I guess sports are our bread and butter, but we do go into food, pop culture, all over travel, kind of a little bit all over. Yeah, we're all over the place. We've had YouTubers on before, so no pressure to discuss sports. But I have seen you've done like workout videos.
Yeah, and so okay, so I'm lying. I got really into UFC for a while, and I still watch that. I liked it because they were only showing fights like once a month, and it was like exactly enough where I could feel like I participate. I could feel like I always know what was going on, but without being overwhelmed.
What about now?
Almost every other
What do you
sport.
feel about it? Because now I feel like it's on every week.
So now they now it seems like there's like fights like twice a week sometimes. It's just like there's just too much. So I haven't been following it. It's kind of like that. I mean, I understand why they want to push more, just because I'm sure they make more money. But from a kind of a casual fan's point of view, it was hard. It was before it was perfect. I'm like, oh yeah, once a month, I'll make time for that. But now I just can't do it.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to the feeling of being overwhelmed by the sheer amount of sports at times. I mean, I've kind of thrown myself fully into it and then kind of following everything, but there are definitely moments when it's a little bit too much. And if you are trying to be a casual fan, you know, you don't want to feel as if I've watched 10% of what's happened this season.
Yeah.
And
I remember, I forgot if it was a basketball game or an NFL game, but I remember I was at a friend's house and we're, going to go eat. And I was like, there's only 20 more minutes left for the game. He's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I can wait. It's fine. That 20 minutes took like over an hour.
yeah, I mean, I guess that's the other good thing about UFC or boxing or basically any of the combat sports. You kind of know it's either going to take X amount of time or less. Like you're never going to get dragged into suddenly this took 3 hours longer than I expected it would. Apart from they consistently start late. I guess that's the only other downside.
Yeah, I can see that. So actually, the sports was actually my not love of sports, I guess, was the reason why I actually started kind of this alternative lifestyle and I started traveling. Growing up in San Francisco, I never felt like I fit in. You know, like I remember when people started. I think the only sport I played until like fourth grade was handball, which isn't actually like a sport. And then in fifth grade, everyone got into basketball, and I think because I was good at handball, I didn't want to change. I was like, no, like people are going to come back to handball, and obviously they never did. So, as all my friends, they started getting into basketball through middle school. And it's like I felt like I never fit in. Every day after school they would go play, they would watch, go watch the games, and it wasn't until I was like 27, and I went to Thailand for the first time ever, and I got into Muay Thai. I was like, man, this is actually something I enjoy watching, but also doing myself. And I think that was the big inspiration why I started traveling.
I feel like that's a big leap to go handball to Muay Thai. I feel like you skipped a number of steps in the seriousness and the danger of the sport.
Yeah, well, okay, so I did wrestle in high school for 3 years, and then when it stopped, I was kind of like, well, I wasn't good enough to wrestle in college, and actually my university didn't have a team anyways. I didn't know about like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or anything. That's another sport I got into later on. Also Thailand, because I was at like one of these fight camps where people do Muay Thai, and they've gotten really popular lately. Like you see them in the UFC trainers, fighters go out there a lot. But yeah, if I knew about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, when I was younger, I think I would have been more into sports.
Hey, never too late.
Yeah,
sometimes it is, man, for these sports. It is.
Well, and that's when I saw your YouTube moniker as Johnny FD. At first I thought, oh, same initials as me. Maybe we got the same name. But then I realized I watched some of your videos and I saw it's fighter/diver is how you came up with that, correct?
Yeah. I wrote a book when I basically ran out of money, and I had broken too many little I had too many injuries where I couldn't fight for a while, and I had nothing to do. I couldn't train, I couldn't fight. And I was like, man, what can I do for the next 2 months while I'm just kind of recovering? So I sat at I was living basically at this Muay Thai gym, and my window faced the ring, so I could hear people training twice a day. So I'd be up at like 6:30, 7 in the morning, just hearing people hitting the pads like, watch out, ta-da, And I had this crappy laptop, and I was like, you know what? I've been blogging all these years about how to live cheaply in Thailand, what it's like. People always ask me questions. Let me just turn this into a book. And I wrote 12 Weeks in Thailand, The Good Life and the Cheap. And when I decided to put my name down, I think nowadays it's a little bit more normal, but I'm sure you guys all had weird screen names back in the day with AOL or MySpace. You want to shout them out?
We're old enough.
Yeah. I've gone through them all. MSN Messenger, AOL Instant Messenger. I have sometimes I just cringe heavily when I think back on some of the screen names I've had.
Let's hear some.
Okay, I'll tell you one, which is probably might get me added by a few people. Even now, I've got my Xbox gamer tag, which I created when I was. I mean, it's going back now 16 years, something like that. And this has to be kind of explained slightly. Basically, I kind of reacted badly to the culture of people being a little bit the kind of people throwing around gay slurs a lot. Mm-hmm. So I called myself Brokeback Eddie as my name. So I've kept that ever since, and it leads to I'll randomly be playing a game, and people will just ask me why on earth my name's Brokeback Eddie. Every once in a while, I'll have a new friend play a game with me, and they'll be confused by it.
I was gonna say the kids you're probably playing with now have never seen the movie anymore, so it's probably way over their head at this point.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. They just think I like horse riding or something.
Yeah, maybe. And Frank, you want to say one of yours?
Yeah, mine, and I still use it a lot. It was Dukadunk 14. So 14 because it was my favorite number, and Dukadunk because when I was younger in school, I was very talkative. So my teacher would tell me, Duka, dunk your head. And I'd have to put my head on my desk, and I wasn't allowed to look up or speak for 5 minutes. So I just took that as Duka dunk, and that was it. Not good at basketball in any sense of the way.
All right. Well, that's good. So I wanted to use Johnny, but I was like, I don't want to use my last name, which is Jen. And I was like, you know what? let me try to squeeze a couple more keywords into this Amazon search. So I put fighter, diver, or dive master because the book was mostly about Muay Thai fights and scuba diving.
It's a pretty good name origin story. I mean, it definitely beats it beats what we came up with, and it's really hard to name things. When we had to name this podcast a couple of years ago, that was like an endless debate. We came up with a number of different ideas. Then all the ones we really loved initially turned out they were taken, which in the world of podcasting is not that surprising. And then we kind of fell on the Big Chill podcast because, I mean, the origin of that, which we've discussed before, is there's a bar in London that when we go on group trips to London, we always start in the Big Chill. So that's kind of the origin of the podcast name. We also joke now that maybe people just think we're a podcast dedicated to the Big Chill, the movie from the 80s. But
I've also not seen that, yeah.
well, those are the only two topics we discussed, Johnny. So you're out of luck here.
All right.
But I guess you've kind of hinted then at your origin story, I guess, of your kind of YouTubing back, your nomadic lifestyle, and then that spun into now your YouTubing.
Yeah.
What has your life been like in terms of travel and where you've gone to, and then how did the YouTube channel come about?
So on paper, my life's been this kind of this whirlwind this last 10 years. You know, I've been to 50 countries, just moving around every 2-3 months. I worked as a diver for maybe 4 years, so I saw some of the most kind of like the most beautiful places in the world. Worked in the Caribbean, worked in over Thailand, over like Borneo, all these cool places. Did Muay Thai. You know, I don't want to I wasn't doing it professionally, but it was also my only paycheck. So I was kind of just a bad professional. Let's just say that I was trying to get to Muay Thai, but did that for about 3 years. Was okay at it, but never great. And then from there, I was living in Thailand, and I just kind of accidentally stumbled upon, like a digital nomad kind of online business community. Got really heavily into that for about 6-7 years. I built a couple businesses. I made a bunch of money, and luckily I was still living frugally, so I saved it all. And when COVID hit, I had just sold my business because I had just honestly just got tired of running it. I just wanted to take a break. And when COVID hit, it was supposed to be just a little vacation. I was like, let me just chill. I'm not doing, I can skate by for a year or two. And I decided, you know what, let me try this YouTube thing, just for fun. Let me see if I can make it a hit. I was in Sri Lanka, all of 2001, 2021, and yeah, I was the only one that was doing like nobody else was traveling, and everybody was at home with nothing to do. People got tired of watching Tiger King, so they turned on Johnny FD.
What was the growth of the channel like then? How long did you feel as if you were kind of speaking to no one before you felt like you had a bit of traction?
So if you go back on my channel and kind of sort by oldest video, my first video was uploaded in 2008, and I think it was one of my Muay Thai fights. And then I had a bunch of like scuba diving videos. And there was no story, there was no like theme. It was literally a place to host videos so I can share it with my friends and my family. And some of them have like, less than 100 views, even today probably. So it definitely wasn't a place to try to, to grow a business or get popular. And then I started kind of putting, more of kind of like my lifestyle stuff. I gave like apartment tours. I don't even know really why I was doing it. It was kind of just always a side hobby. I just kind of enjoyed it. But for the first, I want to say like 8 years, there was very, very little growth. It was very slow. Never made more than $100 from it. And in Sri Lanka in 2020, that like probably the first video I posted, probably got like 20,000 views. And then that, the next video really blew up and, had like 100,000 views or something because there's just nobody traveling at the time. So I went from having a very small audience to having, probably 30,000 subscribers, within a few months. And it kind of just it snowballed from there. But what really like brought it to the next level. Then I went to Turkey for a while, and I had like a whole series there, and people really liked it. So that got me another 30,000 subscribers. I went to 60, and then I met Harold Balder out there, who was a super famous YouTuber who was friends with Bald and Bankrupt, and we started hanging out in Ukraine. And he had me in one of his videos, and that's when things really took off. That's when I hit 100,000.
I think I discovered you through Bald and Bankrupt.
Yeah, I think most people did.
Yeah, I mean, it was a channel that, kind of one of those weird YouTube channels I stumbled across years ago of just watching someone explore countries I'm absolutely never going to go to.
Yeah.
So I thought it's one of those times where you kind of question to yourself, like, why am I, I'm not in really enjoying the content, but why am I spending, at 3 a.m, and why am I watching someone travel to this remote region in the former Soviet Union? But
that's exactly it. It's because we would never imagine ourselves going there. They're kind of like, but it's you're curious, like, what the heck is out there?
So I'm interested because you said, you did this at a time when not many people were traveling because they really couldn't. How difficult was it for you to be traveling at this time and to kind of be able to make the content for the videos and do some of the things that are in the videos with everything maybe being closed or shut down or restricted?
Yeah. So, the first series was actually had nothing to do with travel. Basically, I had done online business for like 7 years prior to that, and people always were asking me questions. And one day, I was like, you know what? I have a month of lockdown, right? I physically cannot leave the property. I have nothing to do. Let me just see if I can just make this like a video course, and I'll just put it on YouTube for free because I didn't want to sell it. Not that I'm against money or anything, but my mentor, the guy I learned from, he has a course, and I used to just tell people to buy that. But then I figured, there's a lot of people who they won't buy it because they're either cheap or they're broke. And I was like, you know what? Let me just, make this kind of free thing and just put it out there. And that way, if anyone ever asks, I can just direct them there. So I spent the first month doing that. And that kind of was the first kind of big pump. But then I decided to give I gave a tour of the villa I was staying at, because it was super cheap. It was like, I think I was spending like $200 a month, and I was living in this beautiful shared villa, like right across the beach. And then my friend, this girl, had an even nicer one that was like, $250 or $300 in the jungle. And I showed that, and I was like, man, like that really blew up. And then I decided I wanted to go to the east coast of Sri Lanka because the surf season was starting there, and I'm not a good surfer, but I was learning at the time, and I decided to film just that journey from the south of Sri Lanka to the east coast. And at the time, it was hard. It's kind of scary because everything was unknown. Like, we weren't really allowed to travel. Things were technically still closed. So we were kind of like hoping we can actually get there. But then things opened up in Sri Lanka. Like, we couldn't leave the country. There was no more, it was very hard to get flights out of the country, and there was not really anywhere to go. And nobody can get in. So there were no flights into the country. But once you were there, you can basically travel anywhere. And that made it really easy for me to travel all of Sri Lanka. And I have seen now more of Sri Lanka than 99% of Sri Lankans.
That's great.
Unique. You should add that to your YouTube channel description. Yeah. I've got one big question, which is something I always think about when I see people vlogging. And it was kind of a challenge I kind of had to overcome when we started doing the podcast. This idea of just recording me speaking to people. There's that sort of imposter syndrome, or just the slightly uncomfortable to wrap your head around the concept. I cannot imagine walking down a road and filming myself and knowing that you're getting attention from other people, kind of observing, maybe thinking it's weird, trying to figure out how famous you are, kind of all of the dynamics that are involved in that. How easy was it for you to start doing that? And at this point, is it just second nature for you to have a camera as you walk down the street?
Yeah, it's still weird. It's always going to be weird. Actually, yesterday I just did a live stream on kind of like the main street here in Ukraine because everyone's worried about. Yesterday was supposed to be like Russian invasion day, and I decided to use a selfie stick for the first time pretty much in my life, just because on the first stream, at first it was hard to just hold the camera the whole time, but second, people were complaining that it was just like kind of a close up of my face and not showing the background. So I was walking around with a selfie stick for an hour, and it felt so awkward. It's like I'm lucky that's not my style normally. Normally, my videos, even though I talk to the camera a lot, most of it is actually kind of short clips, like 30 seconds to a minute max, and then I edit them together. So I'm never really talking to the camera in front of a big audience or a big crowd for that much time, you know. And I try to be kind of selective about it, where I try not to make it too awkward for people. But yeah, it never gets that much more comfortable.
And do you feel like, because obviously you're in a group of, you know, you're friends with a number of YouTubers who do similar things, is that consistent among all of those YouTubers, or do you think other people are just more accustomed to it?
No. We all joke about it. We're like, you know, I think Bald even had said, like, if you don't think it's weird, you're a sociopath.
That's probably fair.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So I guess that kind of brings up, as you've just mentioned, yesterday was supposed to be Russia Invasion Day. You're based in the Ukraine. It's a focus for much of the world's media at the moment. How different is the sort of atmosphere and experience on the ground compared with, say, how it's being reported in international media?
It's completely different. If I didn't have people messaging me from the U.S. or, you know, from you know, basically outside of the Ukraine, it wouldn't be that big of a deal at all. Like like people hardly ever talked about it until the last few days, when it was really the Western kind of, you know, I guess the Western media influencing kind of the English speaking people to have, you know, Western friends, and then they started freaking out the Ukrainians, and then some of the Ukrainians started freaking out. But really, like, it wasn't like here it's not that big of a deal. Like they've been at war with Russia for the last 8 years now. They understand that if Russia wanted to attack, they would have just done it. They're not going to announce it and say, "Meet me at the playground next Thursday at 2 p.m." You know, they would just do it when, like, in the middle of the night when people are sleeping. So, yeah, it's been completely different, and it's like it still drives me crazy how much, like, how many comments I get, like, not just on my like Ukraine live videos about, you know, the war, what's going on, and people ask, they're like, "Well, if you're not interested in it, why do you do these videos?" And I say, it's because if I try to do anything else, people just like bring it back to that topic anyways. Like my last video was about my dad's birthday and like changing a flat tire and like, you know, like this good seafood restaurant in Half Moon Bay, California. And all the comments were about Russia, and I was like, "Come on, guys."
So
it's. Go ahead, Frank.
So do you think now that there's this increased Western media influence, has it changed what's going on in Ukraine, or is it still day to day is completely normal and you wouldn't suspect anything's really changed? Or now has it been such kind of like an increase in media talking about it that now it's actually affecting what's going on there?
Yeah, it's actually snowballed it. For example, a lot of Ukrainians work for American companies or Western, like European companies, especially in IT. And one of my good friends, she just basically left the country because her company said to her, "Hey, like we'll give you $1,500. Just leave Ukraine. We're worried about, you know, our employees." So she left the country, and a few other, you know, Ukrainian friends have done something similar, where they moved to, you know, Western Ukraine, closer to the Polish border. And it was, you know, and at first I was like, man, like, I can't believe your boss would give you money to move, because I assumed she worked for a Ukrainian company, and then I realized, nope, it was the Americans.
But in terms of there's no and this might be sound like such a simple question. Aside from that, it's kind of business as usual. There's no food shortages. There's not shops closed that otherwise would have been open.
Yeah.
Everything is the same.
Nothing at all. And you know, the funny thing is, if this was America, and I think somebody had commented this, they're like, you know, are people like stockpiling or like, you know, is there food on the shelves, right? And there was a whole discussion, you know, about it. And one person said, like, you know, Ukrainians are too poor to stockpile. Like, you know, they can only afford to buy what they buy. And you know what? Honestly, that's kind of true for some people, right? It's, you know, some people's salary are still pretty low, but it's also just the mentality where they don't get scared as easily. Most people have some food and water at home anyways, just you know, because you know they're kind of just used to being prepared. For example, under my bed here, I had like what 20 liters of water, which is like I don't know how many gallons, but like you know 4 big things of drinking water. Just because, like, there's no reason not to be prepared. But I don't just do this in Ukraine. I did this in Thailand. I did this in other countries where sometimes there's water outages for a day or like, you know, a couple hours. So Americans, I think we're just so used to everything working all the time. And then when there's a panic, we freak out and we're like, oh my God, we have nothing, you know, like we have nothing. So then we run to the store and then we get this mentality of, screw everyone else. Let me get mine. Let me make sure my family's okay. So then, you know, that's how like the toilet paper fiasco went, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's insane. Like, why did anybody need 2 years worth of toilet paper?
No. I mean, I had friends at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's kind of like a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You read, there's going to be a toilet paper shortage, so everyone rushes out and buys extra toilet paper because they don't want to be stuck without it. But I mean, I had friends who I went over to their houses, and they legitimately had 3 to 4 months worth of toilet paper sitting there.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's crazy.
and that's if they were using it very, loosely and deciding, I'm going to have 4 plies with everything I do.
See, Eddie's
Yeah.
just lying to you because he didn't hoard the toilet paper, but he actually has about 200 containers of Pringles under his bed, similar to your water. So there was a Pringles shortage in Paris because Eddie bought every convenience store out.
Yeah, that's just ongoing. That's just the constant state of affairs.
That
That's
was
not tied to
pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just a different mentality out here. Like people just don't do that. Like it's I'm super happy I grew up in the U.S. because I wouldn't have this like entrepreneur mindset or this kind of the confidence of going out and doing my own thing. Like I never would have had the confidence to like write a book for start an online business or start a YouTube channel, things like that. But at the same time, I think most of my friends living in the U.S. They're living kind of like these somewhat boring, mundane lives, and their joy comes from external factors like who's playing this weekend, or it's
Johnny, don't kill our fan base.
But I'm saying, like, I understand why people are so into sports. Is because they're like they might not love their jobs. They kind of might have just like this normal routine. And they're just like their lives like aren't that exciting. And it's hard to travel from the U.S. Everything is so far away. We get so few vacation days. It's so expensive to get anywhere that it's like unless you're into camping or something, like it's like what else are you gonna do, right? So you might as well go tailgate, because that is a fun thing to do with friends, versus like traveling, go on vacation every 5 years or something,
Yeah, I mean, Frank and I have both. I mean, we met in Europe. We've both lived in Europe. And yeah, it's definitely a different mindset in terms of travel. Not only, I mean, in terms of the time off, as you mentioned, and just the ease, the ability to do a weekend trip to another country, which is entirely feasible and affordable, which is, you're right. Unless you're in certain parts of the U.S. and maybe you can go to Mexico easily, or maybe you could go to Canada easily. But for the large portion of the U.S., that's just not a possibility for a kind of weekend trip or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. If I move back to the U.S., I'm definitely gonna get one of these like class B RVs, or like these little van life vans, and I'm gonna use it to drive around 48 states, and do some camping, do some fishing, kind of just have that kind of life. So I think that would be fun. But like being out here, so even from Ukraine, like it's harder from here because we have less flights. But anywhere else in Europe, wherever you guys were, I'm sure you can hop on Ryanair for $20, $30, and you can get to another country.
Yeah, I remember the first time we did a trip because I was living in Paris, and we went down to Marseille, and me and two other people, kind of thought, like, let's just rent a car and drive down to Marseille. And that just blew everyone's mind because they're like, are you kidding me? That's like a 5-hour drive. And we're like, yeah, that's okay. Like, what's the point? Like, you can take the train, you can fly. Like, why would you ever drive that? And it's like, well, in the U.S., that's not even a bad trip. That's like you want to take a weekend trip somewhere. 5 hours is a normal amount of driving to get to where you need to go for your weekend trip. But in Europe, that was just mind-boggling to them. So that was the first eye-opener for me, where it's like, wow, the way that people travel for vacations and just the time they spend on vacations too is another thing. I think most Americans will take a weekend to a week, whereas people in France will take a month at a place or something. It's different. It's definitely unique.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, I'm glad that I, created this life where I'm not attached to anything back home, because I think for most people, as they get older, they have more responsibilities. Maybe they have a house, maybe they have a mortgage, maybe they have kids, maybe their job is, tied to one spot, so they can't easily move. Ironically, I've retied down now here in Ukraine by buying a house and kind of establishing life. So I've kind of given up a lot of that freedoms. The funny thing is I've never owned a TV until last week, because ever since flat screen TVs came out like 12 years ago, I'd been living abroad. So, I would just, rent Airbnbs or places that had them. And finally, I hunkered down. I was like, all right, I'm going to get like a nice big 55-inch TV. I have Netflix again. And I'm just like, I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to sit, I finally have a couch. I'm just like, man, this is a comfortable life. I can order pizza. I can order, I've been ordering buckets of KFC. And I was like, this is also a good life. I don't know if I would have been fully satisfied if that was my only option. I had no other option to do anything. But I think after all this travel, and now I'm like, okay, I've seen enough, done enough. Now it's time to chill. And which is bad timing, because now I can't chill because of this Russian thing every day. But that's why I was so pissed, to be honest. So it was more about just like, man, this is the worst timing ever for me.
That actually kind of brings up an interesting thing for me, and I guess you've sort of answered it. Is there any element of you, from a YouTube perspective, that thought, hey, this is great because this is bringing additional attention to Ukraine? As I guess, I don't know, I assume you're the sort of leading, biggest English-speaking YouTuber in Ukraine on a permanent basis, at least? Was there no part of you that thought this is good for my channel?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, like, I don't wish this happened. Like, I'm not happy this happened. But since it did happen, I might as well be the one to cover it. Sure, it's probably going to get me, some more views, but not necessarily the right type of views, because once they, first, like, I have a bunch of people watching and subscribing that never would have been interested in, like, and probably aren't going to be interested in my other videos. So I doubt my other videos about travel and things like that have even taken off. So if anything, they were kind of like dead weight, where if a month from now all my videos are about kind of like normal travel stuff, if they're still subscribed or YouTube is still recommending them my channel, but they're not watching it, or they're just kind of just watching like just a minute or two and clicking off, it's actually going to hurt my channel. So it's actually not a good thing. Unless they somehow, just like fall in love with my content and just stick around. But I think that's going to be like 10% of the people watching about Russia.
Yeah. So I guess switching over maybe to a little lighter topic, I'm sure you get asked all the time, what's the best place you've ever traveled to? So I'll switch it up and say, what's the second best place you've ever traveled to? What almost made it, but didn't quite get the number one spot?
Maybe Guatemala. It's a really cool spot. Especially for the Americans, it's relatively short flight, kind of similar time zone. Actually, from the U.S., if I was living in the U.S., I would just go to Mexico. Like Mexico, and not just like Tulum or wherever people go all the time, or Cancun. Like Mexico is huge and has so many cool spots. It does suck that you have to be careful not to get robbed. I think the actual danger situation of getting killed by some like drug lord is very, very middle school. Like I wouldn't worry about that. But the chance of getting your backpack stolen if you leave it like at a cafe or something when you go to the bathroom, or you're just not paying attention, that's super high. So that does suck. This is why I like countries like Thailand, where there's a lot to do. It's relatively safe. The problem is it's so far that if you go, you need to go for 3 or 4 weeks. If you go there as a typical American tourist for 1 week and you just go to Phuket or you just go to Bangkok, you probably won't like it. Like you'll probably get ripped off. You'll probably spend too much. You probably won't really see the real culture. I don't think it's worth it. I think a lot of like the two things I recommend is either find a way where you can go somewhere for longer. Maybe, now a lot of people can work remotely. So if you can go somewhere for a month, even if you're working for most of the time, at least, mornings, nights, weekends, you can explore, do stuff, do that, instead of doing a week and a half, somewhere where you're just going to, stay at the resort and lay on the beach because you're exhausted. Right. And if you really do only have a week and a half, don't go so far. Just go to Mexico or go somewhere close.
So yeah, it's a great idea. And when you talked about Guatemala, the first thing that came to my mind was I just thought of like, oh, the coffee must be amazing. And it kind of got me to thinking when I travel, I usually have kind of like go-to things I like to explore everywhere I go. So for me, it's usually breweries and like independent cafe coffee shops. I'll do my research a week ahead, find the 2 or 3 best ones, and just always visit them as kind of like a first thing I do. I'll go there and then talk to the people there and see what they suggest for food, sightseeing, things like that. Are there things like not categories, I guess, but things that every country or every place you go to that you kind of like, I want to make sure I hit up this and compare it to other places? Or is it kind of just you get there and then you just do whatever someone suggests?
I mean, luckily I'm usually in places for 2 or 3 months at a time. So like I kind of just do things naturally anyways. But the things I look out for, once in a while I'm only somewhere for a week, right? But yeah, definitely local restaurants. So not, big chain restaurants. I try never to stay, in the touristy areas. I like the local the local spots. I like to see how they hang out. I always try to go to like a market where they sell, fruits and vegetables, because you get a kind of a better feeling there. And yeah, I like to walk, so I always do like one of those free walking tours where you just tip $5 or $10 at the end, and those guides are usually super cool. Like I always give them a tip, and then I kind of hang out after, and I'll ask people in the group, say, hey, do you guys want to get some food? And I'll invite the guide, and I'll say, hey, like lunch is on me if you want to come join. And usually they have an hour or two to kill in between their next tour anyways. They like meeting, other people, especially if you're cool. And that's where you get like the real good insights on the culture of the people and where to go.
Are there then things, I guess, keeping the kind of travel theme going, are there sort of tips or pieces of advice or smart decisions that you wish that you've kind of learned over the last, few years of traveling extensively that you'd wished you'd known at the beginning, kind of key mistakes you made at some points?
Yeah, really good question. The first thing is don't travel with too much luggage. If you can, travel with a carry-on bag, 8 kilos or less, which is like the 15-pound, kind of carry-on limit. Like not even a rolling bag, just like a small backpack.
Because my really girlfriend's done. She's done.
Yeah.
She's already failed this.
Yeah, and people don't realize this. I mean, first, like no one ever wears all the clothes that they think they're gonna wear. Second, you end up buying stuff or you want to buy stuff when you're on vacation somewhere, and then you have no room, so you can't bring it back. And then third, it just ties you down where you just like you just you can't move around as easily, and you're in a bad mood, you're stressed. Like here's like kind of an example. This is something I really admired about Bald, is him and Harold actually. They both travel super light, so when they go somewhere, instead of first going to their hotel, their Airbnb, to like check in, and then maybe take a nap, and then like eat at the hotel restaurant, and the next day they go somewhere. A lot of times they'll just go straight from the airport out because they just have a small backpack anyways. So from there, if you're able to take local transportation, like take a bus instead of a taxi, first, you're going to save a lot of money. Second, you're probably not going to get scammed. And then third, you really get to know like the local city and the culture and how things are, even before you get to your hotel or your Airbnb. And I think that that authentic experience is worth so much more. And I think the food is way better too. Like I remember when I was in Prague, where I was staying like outside of the city center, and right downstairs from where we were living, there was kind of this like, you walk down some stairs, and there was some bar downstairs. Didn't look like anything special, but it was the closest thing. And we were like, all right, let's pop in. And on the menu, I saw the beer was 75 euro cents, so less than $1 for like a normal size beer. And I was like, there's no way. I was like, this this is literally cheaper than water. So me and my buddy, we each got a beer, and then we got like a pork leg or something, and it was so good. It was the best thing I've ever had in my life. And it turns out it was like a local brewery that just happened, like it wasn't famous or anything. It just happened to be one of these small local breweries. And then I remember thinking, man, like Czech beer, is super good. I want to do a beer tasting like tour. So I signed up, spent like $100 for some like official tour, and none of the beer was as good as what I had at that place. So I ended up going back, and I was like, man, this local place I never would have found is 10 times better than the most famous beer crawls or beer tastings.
Interesting. I think you'll have to send me the address of that place. I might have to move there for 75 cents a beer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure things have gone up since then, but still, I mean, it's still dirt cheap.
All right.
Yeah,
So
and you know what? And for the beer fans out there, I'm gonna tell you a little story. We, especially as Americans, we always hear that German beer is the best, right? So the first time I went to Germany, I was so excited, and I went to the bartender, and I said, hey, it's my first day. Give me the best German beer, or give me the best beer. And he's like, oh, I got this really good one. It's blah blah blah. It's from Czech Republic. I was like, no. I'm in Germany. Like, give me a German beer. And he's like, I can give you a German beer, but the Czech beer is better. And that's when I realized that, I don't know how German beer got that famous, but it's actually, it's really not that great. It's okay. Yeah.
I think it's just Oktoberfest and the big steins. Yeah. I think that's just creates this idea that it's a huge beer culture.
And I think that they're also the ones that kind of developed that, like, what constitutes a beer. Aren't they the ones that have like the strict rules for like this has to only have these 3 ingredients in it? They were kind of the ones that not mandated it, but put that out there. So I think people think because they make rules about what beer should be that they must know and have good beer, but probably not.
Yeah,
Germans just love rules.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're right. Like the German purity law for lagers,
yeah, that's it,
and to be fair, they all Yeah, and they all taste okay. They taste exactly like what you're going to expect. But it's kind of like saying, like, your meal is only going to have 3 ingredients. Yeah, it'll be consistently okay, but it can be better. Like, for example, Belgian beer is super tasty. But it's like always wild. It's like, they flavor it with like, crazy stuff. Like, so it's always going to be like a little bit sweet or a little bit like, I don't know, like cherry flavored or like chocolate flavored or vanilla flavored or whatever. And not just like the hints of a chocolate aroma, like that somebody would say, but like actually there's probably chocolate in there, like cacao powder in there. So it's good, but you can only drink so much of it.
You got to admire the Germans for doubling down on the purity law, not being put off of that as a tag.
Yeah, I don't know, but like that's it kind of reminds me of like inbreeding, right? Like it's a good idea to keep your genes pure, but like bloodlines are kind of meant to be mixed after a while.
So, in addition to your YouTube, I know you have you've got your podcast, the Invest Like a Boss podcast,
Yep.
that you're a co-host of. So, it'd be interesting. We've had a number of discussions about NFTs
Oh God.
on this podcast. In particular, obviously, the sports NFT world is kind of booming. What are your opinions on NFTs? Do you own some NFTs? Do you think it's a bubble that is bound to burst at some point and people are going to get left holding the bag? Kind of what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it is 100% a bubble that's going to get burst. The technology behind it is cool because it's like it's the first time, you can have basically a digital signature saying like you own this baseball card or basketball card or whatever. So that is cool. That's going to stick around. But there's no reason why people should be spending $30,000 on, a baseball card or an NFT that is that new and not established. Like even with just think about like sports cards in general, it's very easy to now to be like, Matt, like no, if you just held on to it, they're all worth a lot of money. But that's really not true. It's only the ones we remember that are worth a lot of money. I guarantee every single person listening to this had wasted a bunch of money when they were young buying some whatever baseball cards.
Johnny,
whatever.
Johnny, you're speaking to two of them. So.
Johnny, I just threw out about 10,000 baseball cards because they were worth literally nothing.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with NFTs, and like the fact that the prices are even like have already gone so crazy. Sure, some of them are going to happen to be worth a lot, but then majority of the people, 99.9% of people are going to get screwed.
Okay, so are you yourself? Maybe you don't want to disclose it.
No,
Are you
I do not collect NFTs. No.
Okay, interesting. And not tempted to create a Johnny FD NFT, start an additional.
Wow, that's a lot of letters.
Yeah.
No way. Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, there will not be a Johnny FD NFT anytime soon. I would say that.
Interesting. Yeah. For me, I'm definitely with a lot of things. I feel like I'm kind of trying to hop on the train a little bit too late. I have that constant feeling. I felt like that a little bit with Bitcoin, where you kind of had the thought early on. And even though from the moment I started to think maybe I should be interested, if I'd invested there and then, I would have still done incredibly well. Just the thought that I'm always a little bit too late kind of puts me off doing it. And I sort of feel like that already with NFTs, which is kind of crazy given how new they are. Additionally, for me, I have slight hesitancy based on the environmental impact. It doesn't seem like it's a great thing for the world. And it's interesting to me that a lot of people who are pumping NFTs are also people who are telling us we need to kind of cut our consumption and think more about how our impact on the environment. Might be talking to a few famous actors out there.
Are you talking about like the mining process?
Yeah, the mining, the servers, and I know that they're working on more efficient ways of addressing that in terms of how it can be done, but just the overall sort of environmental impact of both, I mean, at times cryptocurrency and the blockchain, but also just the NFTs themselves, kind of on the basis of that, is a slight concern for me.
I don't know too much about how NFTs are generated, but most of them I know on the Ethereum blockchain, which is very different than Bitcoin. So you're not actually mining Ethereum as you would Bitcoin. So it's not, you don't have the same kind of environmental problems. But that's not something I know, a super ton about. But yeah, I do understand that it does seem very hypocritical that, like, I think that's why Elon, I don't know what his intentions were. But yeah, when he was pushing Bitcoin and things like that back in the day, then he realized he's like, oh, actually this is completely the opposite of, what we should be pushing energy wise in the world.
Yeah. Well, hey, now he's donating Tesla stock to solve world hunger, right? So problem solved. Another problem solved by Elon Musk.
That was like,
so I guess then
I was gonna say, it just
Go ahead,
reminds
Frank.
me of I just saw a little Instagram post about the Super Bowl and all these celebrities who are, always endorsing for like climate change and everything. And then they showed the night of after the Super Bowl, there was over 250 private jets that just left LA and went all over back to their home base. And it was like, yeah, but please recycle. It's like, it kind of reminds me of the same type of thing.
Yeah, I saw that meme. It was pretty funny.
So you're not on the NFT bandwagon, but then we've kind of asked for you for your travel tips. What would be your current investment tips in an obviously somewhat volatile market at the moment? But what would be the invest like a boss move right now?
Yeah, so I like to keep more than half my money, half my net worth in low cost index funds, most like Vanguard funds. These are just kind of like broad baskets of stocks with really low fees. So, for example, the total U.S. stock market, and the total international stock market. That's always like as long as the world hasn't collapsed, in which we would have bigger problems anyways. That basically is almost guaranteed to go up over time. It has historically, and normally they go up about 7 or 8% a year. Obviously there's ups and downs, but in general, if you just hold on to them, they're good. And that's kind of like my baseline. That's probably between 50 and 70% of my total net worth. I do try to keep, a year's worth of living expenses just in cash in a savings account. And that way I never have to sell if things go down. So I have, half of it in hryvnia, which is the Ukrainian currency, because that's what I spend day to day, and half of it in US dollars. And then I have, some real estate, both my physical property that I'm living in. I have a rental property as well that gives me some money each month. I have some other kind of real estate investments that are more kind of like a fund. And then for 5% of my, I allow myself, between 5 and 10% of my total net worth as kind of like the fun gambling fund, whether that's individual stocks or, cryptocurrencies or, like Forex trading, whatever it is. I'll allow myself to have fun, and make these kind of big swings. But normally, it's never over 10%. Normally it's about 5% of my net worth.
All sounds very sensible. I guess that might also address, I know that a lot of, you see it in your YouTube comments along the time, and you kind of address it sometimes on your Instagram. A lot of your audience is intrigued by whether you are wealthy or poor, living frugally. I know it's like a constant source of intrigue for your YouTube audience.
Yeah.
Anyone who says net worth must have enough to be able to use the term net worth.
Or at least the knowledge of what it means. Because the thing is, people don't realize there's a big difference between like being rich and being wealthy. And like people think being rich is just balling out, having cool clothes, having a cool car, and like you can look rich, you can act rich, but wealth is how long you can actually go with your current lifestyle, assuming you never work again. Regardless if you quit or if you get injured or the economy goes down, whatever it is. So I've always liked living frugally, and I tell myself, I was joking with a friend, saying I'm kind of like the opposite of the Tinder swindler, where instead of trying to convince girls that I'm rich, I try to convince them that I'm broke.
Well, it's definitely it's obviously equally as intriguing. So I don't know. Maybe in the future you have a Netflix show about you, but I do find it amusing, and I know in a sense for the entire community of YouTubers that you're involved in, it's kind of a constant source of intrigue. I think for all of them is to know, because you're all that. I mean, part of the attractiveness of watching the videos is it's not people splurging on super expensive things and being showy. It's kind of attainable trips at all times.
Yeah.
And it does obviously lead to people wondering, are these people doing the most they can, or is this a conscious decision to be as frugal as possible?
I can't tell you this, so I know a lot of like YouTubers, but also like Instagram, what do you call them? Like people with big Instagram audiences or big TikTok audiences, whatever it is. I would say this kind of almost 100%. The people who look like they're spending a lot of money usually are pretty broke, like in real life. Like their net worth is usually pretty low. But the ones that are living kind of like a normal life but have like a pretty big audience, normally like they're saving up and they're doing okay.
Yeah, and I guess that's also one of the challenges is similar to NFTs. It's a bubble that could kind of burst at any time, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
your channel, for whatever reasons, just the audience moves on, or you decide I don't want to make YouTube videos anymore because other things in my life have popped up. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, just TikTok. There's people who were super famous on Vine who
Yeah.
didn't manage to make the transition to other apps.
Yeah, and you're done.
just it was gone.
Actually, I personally know a guy who has 1 million subscribers on TikTok, and he's broke. He has no money. Like, and he's like trying to like, get sponsors for like $150 or something. He'll like sponsor anything, but like it's like he's broke. Like there's just no. It's not an easy way to monetize. I like YouTube because as long as you have kind of content that's kind of you'll never have evergreen content, but like as long as you have like a personality that people actually want to follow you, based on they want to know more about you, what you're up to, kind of regardless of where you go or what you're up to. Those people normally have kind of a longer shelf life, but the ones that kind of just like the one hit wonders, kind of like music, right? It's like sometimes it's not very stable. So yeah, I'm lucky that YouTube has never been my primary kind of source of income. It's kind of hard now to explain. Like when I meet people and people ask what I do for a living, I mean, technically my only source of active income is YouTube. So I tell people I make videos on YouTube, and then people are like, well, like, okay, and it, like sometimes these things don't click, right? They're like, how can he afford to buy this, this property, or like, oh, if he has that many subscribers, shouldn't he, be popping, champagne more often? Like, it's kind of like people either way overestimate or way underestimate how someone, how much money someone should be making. For me, I'm kind of very fortunate that my kind of passive income through my investments would be able to float me, but having this YouTube money, that's kind of just spending money. So if that goes away, it'll suck, but like, and I'll have to cut back, but as long as I'm doing it, it's kind of like, it's like the coolest job, I've ever created for myself, because it forces me to go out and do things, go places and travel, and it gives you enough money to pay for those trips.
Yeah, you're taking like to throw a sporting reference in here, you're taking like the Rob Gronkowski approach to managing your finances. He famously has never touched a cent of his NFL salary. He has lived exclusively off of his sponsorship deals and has never done anything with the actual salary that he's earned. So, which is surprising for someone who comes across as kind of an idiot, but making smart financial decisions.
Yeah.
I really like this HBO series Ballers. I'm sure you guys have seen that. I wish I could like if anyone's like some NFL star or something that wants some financial advice, like hit me up, because I think most of them are just so bad with their money. Like, and I just feel bad. I'm like, man, like this isn't gonna last forever. Like it's
I see that's
very
the issue.
short-lived.
I don't think they do realize it's not going to last forever. That's mistake number one that they're making.
Well, also, I mean, ESPN did a documentary, part of that 30 for 30 series called Broke, and because I think more than 50% of NFL players go broke within 3 years of retirement.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a slightly misleading stat because most NFL players' careers are 1 or 2 years, so it's sort of, you imagine that they're earning tens or hundreds of millions, and they're not. But the fascinating thing is just their lack of financial awareness. Just people who are completely unaware of the fact that tax exists. They think they sign a $100 million contract, and that means $100 million hits their bank account. Yeah. And in part, it's through no fault of their own. It's just their own backgrounds and the fact that they are not in a position to have kind of families educating them on that fact. Yeah. But it's just fascinating to see the mistakes that they make along the way.
Yeah, and it's like lotto winners too. Like, and it's over and over too. Like, you would think that somebody. I mean, here's the problem: is like it's not in the best interest of the NFL to even get involved, because they want them to stay broke so they can stay hungry, so they can keep coming back every year. Because if they saved 90% of their sponsorship deals and their salary, they would retire after 4 years. But like if they're spending everything, they have to keep playing.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, again, throw out Antonio Brown, for example. I'm sure he's broke. He has issues where he's people are taking him to court for not paying $3,000 bills. Meanwhile, he's signing $20 million contracts. It's insane.
Yeah, something doesn't add up.
Yeah. No, either he's just a massive asshole or he's really struggling financially.
So,
Yeah, and it could be both, but also just like being that terrible with money, they doesn't even know what's going on.
and I know we've kept you for a while, but so I have one more question then. So we do a lot of food related talk on the podcast, and we like to discuss, I guess one, like the best things we've eaten, but also like how much we've eaten. So I want to ask you both of those questions. So what are some of the best things you've eaten, and what was a trip you went and you just ate so much that you sat down and afterwards and it was like, wow, how did I just eat that much food?
Well, I mean, to answer the latter, like in Asia, I always order 3 meals because it's like the portions are so small. Ukraine usually 2, and
The Ukraine
like,
portion
it's-
is small?
yeah. Well, I guess it depends where you go, but yeah, in general, they're not small. They're like normal. I want to say that because I went back to the U.S. and I remember I went to the Cheesecake Factory and I was like, like it was like I'm like, there's no possible way I could finish this chicken pot pie. Like it was so much food. And then you get a dessert after that. And you just like, man, I ate like 4,000 calories probably like 8,000 calories just then. So yeah, the U.S. portions are insane. I eat a lot, but actually, I would say traveling. I don't know. Like it depends. If I'm moving around like a lot, and I'm like I got 1 week to try everything, that's when I overeat, and that's another reason why it's not good to go for such a short trip. But whenever I go to Italy, that's my spot. Like I love Italian food. I love pasta, love pizza. I love all that.
So is that the best food you've had when you were in Italy?
It's one of my favorites. Tacos in Mexico, like really really good. But California they're good as well.
Now you're talking my language.
Thai food, yeah, yeah. I love Thai food. I would say like Thailand has the best food. I can tell you where they have the worst food. Actually, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but most people I know like don't like the food of the Philippines. Let's put it that way. In Sri Lanka, the food in Colombo, their capital, was excellent. There was great restaurants, but the entire rest of the country, for whatever reason, like every single other place in the whole country, the food sucked. And I've heard it's just because if you're a good chef, you would just go to the big city and make all your money there. But like, just imagine if LA had great food, but every other state and city, had just terrible food. It just wouldn't make sense.
So speaking of the tacos, there's a really good, now that you have a television and Netflix, I don't know if you've seen, there's a really good documentary series from the Mexican Netflix called Taco Chronicles. And each episode, and I think you'd really appreciate it because each episode they take a specific type of taco and go to the actual region that it originated from and go back to the basics of how is the most traditional method of preparing it, and what was the meat that was the traditional meat they used and how they did it. And it's an awesome documentary series. You have to watch. It's called Taco Chronicles.
I can't watch that from here. I can't watch that because I'm gonna be just feeding for it. I'm gonna hate myself.
So I live.
Sounds great.
I live in Arizona now. So what we used to do is every episode we watched, we would just then Google what was like the best we could find in Tucson, and then by like the next day or two, we have gone to that spot and been like, I wonder if this is as good as what it was on the show.
Oh man.
And that's going to be then, because as I said, we've kept you slightly longer than we said we would. But my final question then, because you have posted several times about Mexican food in Ukraine.
Yeah.
How good is that on a kind of? Is that just the best Mexican food you can get there, or is that legitimately? It could kind of not go to toe, say, with the best Mexican food in California, but at least it wouldn't be laughed at a town.
Yeah, like it's not bad. Like if you had that in California or even in Mexico, you'd be like, it's okay. Like, you wouldn't complain. But, like, there's much better places in Mexico and California. But
And Arizona.
the guy that opened it is, I don't know. I have no idea. But to be fair, the guy who opened it is from California, and that's why it's relatively authentic.
Wow, maybe we got to get that guy on. I want to know the background of a Californian who moved to Ukraine to open a Mexican restaurant. That is, yeah. But Johnny, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I guess a chance for you to just do a plug just for our listeners where they can find you on YouTube, where they can get your podcast.
Yeah, just Johnny FD on YouTube, but also my blog is johnnyfd.com. I wrote a lot about like my travels in the last 7 years or something. So go through that. But yeah, just find me anywhere.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Good talking to you.